Aloha and welcome to a video on protecting resources. The goals of this video are to identify the first laws passed to deal with water pollution, air pollution, and then kind of talk a little bit more about protecting land resources. Okay, so where did caring about the environment come from? Intuitively, we've probably always known it. We've always done some practices that would help it. But where did we start seeing legislation and governments caring about protecting the environment? The beginning that we mostly like to go back to is this one here that happened on June 22nd in 1969. At this point, there was an oil slick on the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland that caught fire, and it really brought to public light the idea that man could actually have an impact on the environment, and we kind of needed to be a little more careful and cautious with what we were doing. And that caused an awful lot of legislation to occur, and that's what we'll talk about here in the next slide. Now, from the lesson, I took them and put them in chronological order, so we'll kind of go through it that way. The first one in 1970 was the Clean Air Act, and that one established the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. So for 6 different things, they said this is how much we can tolerate. So they looked at carbon monoxide, ozone, lead, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and particulates like dust. So in 1970, they passed legislation that said how much of this we can measure in the air would be acceptable and safe. In 1972, we had the Clean Water Act, and that one was where we went back and we started to eliminate point source pollution. So if we could find where companies and businesses were polluting, we would go back and say, okay, you need to stop this. We need to maintain clean water. This also caused an increase in the number of sewage treatment plants. Prior to this, raw sewage frequently was dumped into the rivers. Now they treated it before they were dumping it. In 1974, we had the Safe Drinking Water Act, and that, much like the Clean Air Act, set maximum contaminant levels in drinking water. So every year you'll get a little pamphlet from the water company that says how much stuff is in the water and whether or not it's safe. That's a product of the 1974 Safe Drinking Water Act. In 1976, we had the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, and this is where they made it illegal and unsafe for the dumping of hazardous wastes. So companies were now not able to just get rid of stuff. Now there was legislation that you could go after the companies that were practicing these things. And finally, in the lessons, it'll mention 1980, the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, which created a Superfund. And this would allow them to clean up the abandoned sites. So the issues of the past, now there was money put aside to clean up those things. So if a company went out of business and just left, we now had money to go in and clean up the site. So all of this legislation gave us power to go back to companies, go back to the pollution sources and say that these are the things that need to be cleaned up. So what can you do as an individual? Well, the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. Use less, buy less, avoid the waste, kind of cut your things down, cut your use down. That'll help a lot. Reuse things, use them more than once. So like if you buy a bottle of water, use the water bottle for an extended period of time. And then finally, recycle. If it's recyclable and able to be remanufactured into something new, go ahead and help out with that. Okay, well, that's the end of our video today. Good luck with your tests and quizzes, and we will see you in the next video.